Hey everybody, welcome back. Legends and Dragons podcast, episode 43. Here at the Legends Lair here in Hurst, Texas. Chance Burleson.
Jimmy Klaus.
Chance, who do we have today, my friend?
We have my dear friend, Carlos Trevino.
Good morning, everybody.
Or whenever they watch it. Hey, do you know that I got some comments that we have some Leos and some folks who listen to the Spotify like, oh man, I'm just driving in the car, I'll listen to you guys, I love your show. I'm like, really? Why?
Yeah.
why do you know though that we have some dislikes?
Yeah, you just told me.
Yeah, on our episode.
Why don't you tell him?
I will tell you the episode. And so some of you guys need to get a sense of humor. I think because the episode, I think it was episode 23, when you and I were just bouncing off ideas like, hey, which celebrity would you fight?
Yeah.
And we chose some easy W's. We chose
the low-hanging fruit.
With the low-hanging fruit, we chose the Helen Kellers.
I chose Stephen Hawking.
We chose Michael J. Fox.
Yep.
We chose Stevie Wonder and
we were just trying to shake it up.
Yeah, and so apparently you guys didn't like that episode. So whatever, man.
That's all right.
Your voices have been heard. Power to the people. Right, even if they're not your people.
Yeah,
that's right.
Hey,
Somebody's people.
Somebody.
Hey, but you know what? They watch.
Yep.
So thanks for watching, Carlos, man. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here, man.
Thank you.
So we were just talking. You're a big boxer guy? Is that where?
Yeah. Boxing is my first love, and it's the only fighting that was given to me from childhood. And so ever since then, it's kind of been where I've gravitated towards.
You get in a lot of fights as a kid?
No, I was actually kind of picked on as a kid, and so just the common, this isn't going to happen anymore to me thing. It's crazy though, the more that I learned about fighting, the less I had to fight, or the less I felt inclined to fight.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to fight.
Yeah.
Now,
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. But martial arts, obviously, anything where you're throwing people around gets my attention. So I love it here. I've known Chance a long time.
Where'd you guys meet?
We've got mutual friends and just kind of run in circles. And I don't think we ever dated the same girl.
We did.
You guys dated the same girl?
I mean, knowing Chance,
was there anger?
there's a possibility that there's more than one. So
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up around here then?
Yeah, I'm a Fort Worth native.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah. I
yeah.
love Fort Worth.
Yeah.
I'm from Virginia Beach area, Norfolk area.
I've been.
And so I got that little bumper sticker that says I wasn't born in Texas, but I got
here as quick as I could.
Yeah, because my scoutmaster, when I was working toward my Eagle Scout, he was a pilot in the Navy. He was the one that actually introduced me to air traffic control. But he's from Texas. He's from the Hill Country down in the Kerrville area.
Yeah.
So he would talk. He's like one of those he had like Texas flag, Texas. I was like, man.
Probably got a tattoo.
I don't know if he didn't have a Texas tattoo, but I was like, man, this guy really loves Texas. So when I was stationed in Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma, I would drop down here to Texas a lot. I was like, I love Texas.
So did I ever tell you, so the part of the world other than where I live that really kind of like plucked on my heartstrings, the very first time my parents took me to the Yucatan, it basically Quintana Roo. It's basically the peninsula where Cancun and the Riviera Maya is, like that little lump on the Caribbean side of Mexico.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love, not just geographically with it, but there was something that resonated with me with the people that I met there, the people that lived there.
Yeah.
It was almost a past life regression kind of thing where I was like, there's something pulling me here. And then so the more that I got to know the history of the Yucatan, first of all, they do not believe that they are a part of Mexico. They believe that Mexico is allowed to be a part of them.
Okay.
When they originally, because the United States is not a term that applies just to the United States. Mexico is actually called the United States too. It's like the United States of Mexico. You know what I mean? Like the original
So they're going to be the 52nd state.
Yeah.
We have Canada
Yeah.
and then
So,
Mexico.
but when they kind of like formed the thing, the original paperwork, the original agreement was that the Yucatan could secede anytime they wanted. And they definitely have kind of like, we're the best part about Mexico.
Okay.
I'm like, it's the Texas of Mexico.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like, because they have the same kind of mentality
Yes,
that the
Texas.
people in Texas have about, like, we're Americans,
Yeah.
but we're the best Americans.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is interesting because most of the people that I know that are from Texas feel exactly the same way.
Yeah, that's
You know?
true. Yeah, well, I mean, you guys I like vacationing in the Gulf of America.
Never been.
You ever been to the Gulf of America?
Not yet.
Oh, you got to.
You know what's funny though about the big controversy about this?
What's that?
Right, the Gulf of America, which they think is as like a whole slight.
Yeah.
The entire set of continents
Yeah.
is called America.
Yeah.
Like you can say that's the Gulf of America and still be talking about Central America, South America, North America.
It's just a name change for.
I know, and people,
stuff.
but people read into stuff, and it's like we were talking about the celebrity.
Yeah.
You know, people have already made the decision they're going to be upset.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard to find something to be upset about.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Carlos? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. People are unfortunately very ill-informed on the core matters of these kinds of things. And so any old post from any of their buddies, and it can rile them up in a direction that, there's not a lot of logic in.
Yeah.
And it's great to sit back and watch them. On Facebook.
Yeah, I enjoy that too.
What I find most now is that my opinions aren't even usually of the sides that I'm rooting for, but I'm digging, the content and the balls that they're putting forward in their posts. Yeah, and it's just like cool.
That's Jimmy.
that is me. I hate to say, if you guys follow me on social media, I'm not apologizing for anything. Y'all are just y'all too dang sensitive.
Yeah.
I love it. No, but so Texas boy, did you run into any trouble like Chance may have growing up?
Yeah, well, it's all funny. It's funny.
It's your story, by the way. You can go as deep as you want, man.
I'm born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas, and I love it here. I married a Northern California girl, and I call her a Yankee because anywhere except for here.
It's Yankees.
It's Yankees, but trouble, yes. It's I've told these stories and stories like it so many times that it's sometimes I'm like is that really me? Was that really what happened? Was that really how it went? But yeah, trouble started real early because of truancy issues and drugs and lying and stealing and gangbanging and all of it here in North Fort Worth. So it's a long story.
Yeah,
so I'm going to need y'all to kind of give me some.
That's you're
because otherwise we'll be talking for hours and hours.
Amen.
And hours.
So all right, so let's start from the beginning then. So your mom and dad from Texas?
So I've got a mom.
Okay.
But I don't have a dad.
Okay.
That's not a thing I got to have.
Okay.
I had a stepdad for a while. Probably 14, 15 years. So the formative years of my youth, I had a stepdad. But, looking back now, I see that he was abusive.
Okay.
Maybe not physically as much, depending on how you feel about a belt and where it lands.
Sure.
But emotionally and spiritually and all the ways that you can't see, we're just plagued with abuse. And what I've identified now is that he, more than anything, he was just a victim of a simple mind. The kind of person that if it's outside of your experience or outside of what you've seen or done, then it's invalid,
right?
Or just subpar, or some, not what it's supposed to be. That was a long process to figure that kind of stuff out, as you can imagine.
Sure.
So I, naturally just tried to get away from home early on.
So about what age were you just had to just get out of there? You think you were just?
Well, I started stealing the car at 12,
Oh, okay.
13.
Were you a good driver? I bet
yeah,
you
I'm a
at 12
great
and
driver.
13.
Yeah.
I bet you at
dude.
12 and 13 you're better than a lot of these people today.
So if we extract the crashes that happened under the
Right.
influence,
It's a learning curve.
Spotless.
Yeah.
Spotless.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I was definitely trying to get away.
Right.
I moved out at 17.
Okay.
Boy, that was a ride.
Where'd you go after you moved out?
Baltimore City.
Okay,
I
so-
got my own apartment. Yeah.
Okay, so
oh, I had made it too. I think it was like 400 square feet,
Okay.
like the whole place.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the size of my closet now.
Yeah.
But I think that the introduction to a lot of the things that would cause me a lot of harm later in life had been planted throughout those formative years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was a victim of sexual abuse as well.
By your stepdad?
No, by a neighborhood boy.
Mm.
I thought he was old. Looking back now, he was just a teenager, and I was 7, 8, and 9 in that window there.
Mm.
As crazy as it sounds, there wasn't a lot of immediate effect of that on my
Right.
life.
Right.
Those things didn't unfold for many, many years.
Right.
What I know now is that I've mastered the art of compartmentalization.
Yeah.
You know, you can walk calmly through fire because you're not there right here, you know.
Mm.
And I mastered that, and that would become essential later in life. Just the chameleon abilities, the ability to disappear in plain sight, operate in plain sight, and just everything that self-preservation related. But needless to say, when I finally did enter the world, I was ill-prepared.
Yeah.
You know? So at 17, I started drinking, and I didn't stop.
How long before you, so 17 until you were like, all right, I need to get my act together?
I think I got sober the last time at 27.
Okay, so about 10 years?
Yeah.
You're just...
Yeah. And, you know, that's just kind of the entry was the alcohol.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, it flowed into a pretty substantial substance abuse problem, an incarceration rate.
Yeah. How long were you incarcerated?
I spent the majority of 2010 incarcerated, almost a year.
Okay.
Which turned out to be, you know, peanuts compared to what I was being offered. I think that it was 27 to 35 years. I had all kinds of theft charges, burglary charges, and evading charges, and possession charges. I've never been a violent person, and I don't have any kind of sexually related assault cases or anything like that. Everything was drug related.
Yeah.
And the things that we do to stay high. You know, and I'm not sure how I should still be in the federal pen.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
if life were fair. So thank God life isn't fair.
So what changed your course? Like, I mean, other than 2010 probably being incarcerated. So when you got out,
Yeah.
how did you find that connection to get clean? Or was it people you hung out with? Is it a program? Was it church? Was it a woman?
A little bit of everything.
A little bit. I'm trying to piece it together into one thing. So I spent the majority of 2010 incarcerated, and I didn't get clean and sober until 2012. So it was a process of quitting, just like it was a process of starting.
Right.
And a lot of trial and error and
Yeah,
failures.
that's true. Yeah, that's a good way to say it too, right? Because it takes that you spend all that time getting into it. Now it takes it's not one day where you're like clean.
No. I think looking back now, it's been so long. It probably took me 2 years after quitting substance before my mind was operating properly.
Okay.
You know, knowing what I know now about neural pathways and things, like it was a good 2 years before I was making rational decisions with the frontal cortex of my brain, like we should. Before that, it was a lot of impulse, chasing feelings and trying to fill voids with feel-good stuff.
Sure,
That was tough.
What did one of my first sponsors used to say that it takes us a year to get the dope out of our system, and it takes us 5 years to get our brains out of hock.
Paying off that interest.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that for me, I have one of those last time using stories.
Okay.
Oh,
For
okay,
some
yeah.
people, For some people, quitting was kind of just, for me, it was one day and one night. But I think it all probably led to that. But it was May 16th of 2012. And I had been up for a few days, I don't know how graphic we can get on here.
You can be as graphic as you want.
I'll just click a little thing like a warning label.
I was up for a few days smoking methamphetamine.
Yeah.
And because I was an alcoholic, I was also drinking bottles of vodka, the cheap stuff too, like plastic bottles.
Yeah, you can't afford to drink the amounts.
No, the funny story, I had a running line of credit at the liquor store.
Oh, okay.
I really did. I really did.
I laugh because there's just a running line of credits. All right, here's Carlos, there you go.
Yeah, and so, day 3 of being awake, your body's fighting, trying to go to sleep, but you're on meth, so you can't mentally go to sleep. But I'm drinking enough vodka to put a horse to sleep,
right?
And smoking weed and any kind of pills that I can take. And that night, or that night when I was kind of in and out of consciousness, I was coughing up all the stuff that coats your lungs when you're smoking meth.
Yeah,
it's like a clear white pasty substance, and you're coughing it up. It's similar to cigarette smokers in their tar hat.
Yeah.
I knew that if I fell asleep, I was going to choke on that. I just from, being on meth, my mind was hyper focused on the symptoms.
Yeah, aspirate. Yeah.
And so I made sure to leave the windows and the doors in the house unlocked. So when they came to find me, they wouldn't have trouble getting in.
Yeah.
And I was so certain I was going to die that I really did, kind of make my peace with God. They always scream it in the Westerns when they're about to blow a guy away. They tell him to make his peace with God, and there's smoke, and it's real cool. But when you're in that moment, alone in a shitty duplex in Riverside, and you're contemplating death, and I wasn't like wanting to die, but I had like submitted to it.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay. I even wrote my mom a goodbye letter, letting her know I was sorry for being such a shit kid, whatever. And I fell asleep, and then I woke up the next day, But in the moment and in the reflection of it, in the next couple of days, I was pretty certain, that that's what it's like when you're about to die.
Yeah.
This is how people die, and I'm not real sure where NA came from exactly, but I knew of the 24-hour group that was on Chester Boyer.
Yep, Chester Boyer.
And that's where I first got my clean time at. Yeah.
So did you? So no one made you go or say, hey, just go. You just after that experience, you're like, man, I got to get my act together.
Yeah, no, they had already tried all that court mandated. I had been to facilities mandated by courts before.
Sure.
I have been voluntarily admitted. But when you're voluntarily admitting yourself to try to escape some felony charges, you're not really, you're not running your own show, even though you might think you are.
Right.
And so that was just.
This was different, man. This is right. This was like.
Yeah, and a lot of shit had happened before. I've been shot 5 times. I've been stabbed twice, and none of that compared to. I'd never felt like I was going to die in those moments, even though I was.
Yeah.
I've OD'd before, just the shit life that comes with trying to be a tough guy when you're not. It actually makes you a tough guy, but the very, very, very hard way.
So where'd you get shot?
Yeah. So you were talking about trying to be a tough guy when you're not.
Yeah.
That hardening process makes you tough in all the worst ways. It creates calluses that take years to undo. Calluses around the parts of us that shouldn't have calluses.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were truly badasses, we would have the courage to feel out loud in front of people. Like if we were really tough, and I wouldn't learn that, like you said, until later. You were talking about the growing up. And how it creates this image management and compartmentalization where when you make a decision to get clean after you've already actually gotten clean, when you make a decision to be different.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be different now. And you and I both know what that means. And you can't. You make a decision to be different. I'm not going to be like this anymore. And you can't do it.
Yeah.
You don't know how to do it.
Right.
Because those neural pathways he was talking about have become so concreted in.
Yeah.
One of my first sponsors talked to me about, he said, Chance, you've been lying by omission for so many years, you don't know how to tell the truth.
Yeah.
You know? And he said, so I am your honesty accountability partner. When you're going to tell the truth, you got to run it by me first, and I can help you figure out if that's what you're about to do.
Yeah.
Because, trying to be honest years later, I've ended up causing even more harm going about it the wrong way, you know? So tell us about, because I know a bit about your story, and I know that to the untrained eye, Carlos, it seems like we were hopeless drug addicts, and then we got clean, and then it was just coming up roses ever since.
It's funny.
To the uneducated, to the uninitiated, they would think that was the problem, was the uncontrollable drug use.
Right.
And once you got rid of that, then you got to live a life of honor and peace and integrity.
Is that true?
And that was not my story.
Was that true, Carlos? It just everything was.
No, and the shit part was that I found out in a lot of cases I really didn't want to change anything.
Okay.
I could see what it was going to cost me, and what it was going to require. Usually accountability, and transparency, and intimacy. Those words, dude.
It's terrifying, isn't it?
It's fucking
yes.
and it sucks because I choose to marry this wonderful woman, way out of my league. I think you can understand that.
Yeah.
It's just way out of my league, with her heart, with her soul, with her brain, just a better human being than me. And what they do when they're good people is they pour love into you. And I
get that, man.
just push that away, man. Because it's not that I don't like, because I love to be loved and adored.
Yeah.
But I only like the love and adornment if I'm not required to then have accountability on my end.
You like it on your terms.
Which is why the microphone works, right? Because then you can put it down. And,
Yes.
And that's what I do, you know. And so that was tough. She did exactly what I wanted her to do,
right.
Be a good person. And then I had to learn how to accept that that kind of stimuli. It rubs me wrong. It makes me feel weird. I'm uneasy.
I get it.
And then the brain says, well, how can I change the way I feel? Well, this used to work.
Yeah.
This used to work all the time. And that's where you'll start obsessing, and you'll start thinking, and it turns your vision. And
so where'd you meet your wife?
where did I meet her?
Yeah, where did you meet her?
On Tinder.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
You met her on Tinder? That is insane.
She went out with one person. It was me. She had the account for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
It was suggested her by her ex-husband. And then we got married. It was pretty nuts.
I've never heard a success story off of Tinder.
Yeah, we're going on 6 years of marriage now.
All right.
And it is true, those first 1, 2, or 3, if you can weather that, you can most likely weather anything.
Yeah.
And we did. At this point, we're pretty certain we're going to be together forever, even after everything. So there's a testament.
Okay, yeah. Let me hear it.
Well, that's just the proof that somehow or another it's going to work.
Yeah.
The process to that.
Did you feel unworthy of when just nothing but the love that?
I didn't until I realized the truth, right? When I met her, I didn't know that she was going to be the one I was going to marry.
Okay.
So I put her through the same interview and selection process.
Gauntlet.
Yeah, we put them all through.
Yeah.
And she won, right? She did the dance and she did all of that, and then something happened. It was either in a dream or kind of a weird reality or a combination. There was just some urge and some pulling of me to make something permanent. And I thought that just meant getting married, the ring, right? We got the wedding license from the county, and that was supposed to be pretty much it, maybe a party and some dinner. And I just assumed that I was going to be able to be a chaste husband and an honest family man and all of that stuff that I wanted, but had no experience with. Didn't have anywhere to look to see what it was supposed to look like. So I kind of just picked, pieces of the shows I would watch, the music I would hear, what I wanted. And it was just a big facade.
Mishmash. Yeah.
Do you have a mentor now? Like someone older that you lean into?
I do, kind of. I mean, I've got priests and I've got a therapist and a psychiatrist. And they together kind of serve as that. But the newest thing for me now is that I have peers. And I didn't have peers before.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I had people who would adore me, and then people that I would look up to. I was on a plane, right, all by myself. Inadvertently. I was probably just too scared to commit to either one, or maybe I didn't really like either choice and just kind of sat in the middle.
I have never heard it put that way, and you just articulated one of my biggest problems over most of my life is that, and I'm going to put it in different terms, but I think we're saying the same thing. I had people that I was above, and I had people that were above me. That in my mind, I don't think that I was actually above them, and I don't think those people were above me. That's just where I put them on the pecking order.
Right.
I had people that I'm like, they want to be like me. And then I had people's like, I want to be like them. But you're right. I was in a league of my own. And what I didn't understand is what you just said, which is everybody is in both places. Peers are in both places.
Right.
They have things that they love and admire about me and aspire to. And I have things about them that I love and admire and aspire to. And that doesn't put either person in this hierarchy.
Right.
And I've never heard anybody really put it in those terms before. But then nobody's better or worse than anybody.
Right. And see, that's where I don't say my problem. That's what I think, in the sense of everyone. Like, that's why I'm able to go to some meetings with some higher up officials and treat them, just have a conversation with them. Because at the end of the day, dude, you're going to be put into the ground. I'm going to be put in the ground. You put on your pants the same way I put in my pants, right? Like, I hold and that's what Miriam says. Miriam says, I treat everyone like my peer, which isn't necessarily bad, but at the same time, when I think everyone's my peer, I'm not really growing in the sense of like, oh, you're my peer, like change, like, okay. But when you find that core group, and then that's when iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah.
You're growing together.
Right.
You're sharpening each other. So go ahead.
I love the fact that I love what you identified as a peer. I don't think I'd ever thought about it that way before. And I'm wondering if people were always that anyway. I just didn't see them that way.
Yeah.
Or I didn't allow it to be that way.
Or maybe they were looking at you the same, placing you improperly, right? And therefore all the miscommunication and the infighting.
Yeah.
But I wasn't necessarily too worried about that because I enjoyed the conflict. I'm a conflictive personality.
You're a chaos
type.
king.
Yeah, I draw towards it. Like when people are in a store, if you hear a loud noise or if somebody started shooting, I'd be like,
hey, what's going on? Yeah.
Let's go see. If anybody's gonna save the day, it's gonna be me.
Right.
Yeah.
But I found today that some of that high stimulation, that high vibration input that I like, the chaos and stuff, I can recreate it in different ways.
Sure.
Friday night sparring or
Right.
or just using a shovel, anything that forces me to get going.
Right. See, and I had this conversation with the guys I work with yesterday. We were kind of, as controllers, our work schedule is crazy. Alternating.
Especially right now.
Sure, right now. I mean, we're working 6-day work weeks and all this stuff. And so I was talking about how I miss going to the gun range. Because I miss the smell. I just the whole thing about the gun range. But I get as you said, that feel note in jiu-jitsu on the mats. So I go 4 to 6 times a week because I desire not the conflict, but
the healthy conflict.
The healthy conflict, right? But we as guys, we need the campfires. We need the shooting. We need the fighting in the course jiu-jitsu. So we need that. And I don't know. So when you need that, right? So you said Friday night sparring. What else do you do though for that kind of high, if you will?
Yeah. So my therapist, she's a CSAT. She works specifically with sexual history trauma, as well as addiction and process therapy. We do this thing called EMDR.
What is that?
It's eye movement.
It's DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy.
Okay.
It's really. Have you ever heard of tapping?
Yes.
Okay. It's processing trauma physically.
Okay.
Yeah, and our goal is to kind of relive it and repackage it in a more manageable, and maybe bite-sized portions. But it's been pretty incredible because she recommends that kind of stuff as well. Especially being a lady, she recognizes that those of us that are like that need to have an outlet. Otherwise, we're going to implode or explode.
Yeah.
Usually explode for somebody like me. And so part of being able to deal with living a little bit slower now, right? Because that was the whole goal, to bring the vibration level down of my life to a more manageable level. She likes to use, the analogies of speed. We were going through life at 100 miles an hour high. And now we need to slow down to about 45. You're going to see more. You're going to smell more.
Yeah.
You're going to experience more, thus gaining more information to deal with the life that comes at you. That's where our problem lies, is in how we respond and receive the external stimuli. And so when you're going slower and you have more information, it's easier to digest it. And that had to be done both through therapy and chemically to get my receptors firing on an even keel and my dopamine and norepinephrine levels evened out, so that when a stimuli comes in, if it's something that's urgent, I don't shoot up, and I also don't go low and completely dismiss and avoid it. So man, it's just been.
So what is a routine? So are you in like a routine? Like my routine would, wake up, make the breakfast that Crittenden has me making now.
No, Matthew.
Yes.
I saw him yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has then I get my quiet time. I get my Bible devotion that I do, then go to work, and then every day have to get 10,000 steps. Every day have to work out, right? Mm-hmm. And so now, of course, I'm on a plan. So my routine. So I have a routine that I have to do during the day. Do you have a routine?
Yeah.
That you get into?
Yeah. So I'm an early riser. The morning is good for me. 5:30 a.m. The alarm goes off, and I jump straight in the shower. That's probably my number one thing, is I've got to get in the shower right away. And then it's work time. Like I can be at work within the hour of having woken up, looking sharp and ready to go. But I've only got about 6 or 7 quality hours to give to any one thing at a time. So I usually am gone by 2:30 from work. And that's a bite-sized portion for me, kind of thing. My program for this kind of stuff and health and family, that's usually in the evenings and the weekends, and we attend, and my wife comes with me, we attend 2 NA meetings a week. We're in mass at church 4 or 5 times a week. We lead a catechism class on Sunday mornings for the kids, and I coach my son's basketball team Thursday nights and Saturday mornings. So that's my program.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room there for the crazy.
Yep,
right?
That's a good thing. That's good.
And it's a product of years of therapy and what we want. But now you've got a situation where everything is laid out well.
Yeah.
You've got the format. Life should be perfect, right? You shouldn't be complaining. You shouldn't be bitching. Everything should be perfect.
Yeah,
and it's not, right?
Yeah.
It's not. And that's where the people get it confused, because I've got the youngsters that look up to me now, and I guess rightfully so. There are things to look up to, sure, but they have no idea that the more that I learned and the more that I obtained was only proof that there was that much more that I didn't know, or that I had to rework and rewire. because everything was wrong. Every way that I received every piece of information or stimulus was wrong. I took it as a threat, or I took it as an attack, or as opposed to just, life on life terms.
And it's just it's a misinterpretation.
Right.
And so what you're describing, it's so funny because so somebody asked me the other day, and it was somebody in the program, and they're like, and I was talking about something that I do, and they're like, well, is that like your regular life thing, or is that like the program? And what's funny is that at the point, and I haven't reached some high level, but I have reached a level that I think is supposed to happen, which is there is no line between the program and my life.
Right. Yeah.
My life is what I have learned, and the great thing about the program is that it has taught me how to learn.
Yeah.
So Hanshi, who is my martial arts mentor, sponsor,
Right.
Business, whatever, I learned how to learn from him by being in the program and working the steps. The gift of learning how to learn and how to say, oh, wait a second, you are better at this than me. Will you show me how to do this?
Right.
And then follow those directions.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I've been in martial arts my whole life. How did I miss that? But anyway, so Hanshi was here a few weeks ago, and he was talking about the difference between routine and ritual.
Okay.
Now, the actions are probably the same in both of those.
Sure. Which I would say.
But a ritual has a mindfulness to it.
Yeah.
That is, and maybe you do the routine to a point where it becomes a ritual.
Sure.
But what Carlos is just talking about is that men like he and I, without a ritual,
Correct.
without that kind of mindful, structured discipline of this is what I do at this time on this day, it's dangerous for us to not have that.
And see, that's why I asked Carlos about that, because I wanted our listeners to hear that whether you have the background like you guys, with just the drug background, substance abuse background, or not, I believe everyone needs a routine or ritual, right? Because as we hear, idle hands. Dude, I'm raising 2 teenage kids. When they have nothing to do, they find something to do to get in some.
And it's generally not making the world a better place.
Absolutely. So, and that's that balancing act, right? We talked about and we've talked about on the podcast before, like, and it's not a balance. It's just it's a continued circle. Like you're constantly there's always changing the seasons, changing of life. We're getting older, right? And we're learning more. But to have a routine, like you need a routine. That's what I'm trying to tell Journey. Like you need a routine. Like you're in school, you have to do this. You have to do this. I'm not saving her. She's gonna have to learn her.
Yeah.
She's gonna make her mistakes. But it's important to have that routine. Working out, health, whatever, all the stuff, man.
Carlos and I, now not everybody and he'll corroborate this. Not everybody in the program has dug into the psychology of addiction the way he and I have.
Right.
A lot of people just they don't give a shit. They you know what I mean? That maybe they have enough information to keep them happy. Maybe they're doing fine.
Yeah.
But he and I, because our stories didn't involve just substance abuse.
Right.
Like our problems were not limited to that.
Correct.
He and I learned something about the difference between a substance addiction and a process addiction, right? A process addiction would be something like a gambler. Okay?
Yeah.
There's nothing going in his body or her body that is causing them to completely lose their pension and run their you know what I mean? There's nothing, they're not putting heroin in.
No.
But it is the same type of thing.
But it's that dopamine.
Shopping.
But it's that same
It's that
dopamine
hit,
Yeah.
It's
the same thing.
Food is very similar to drugs. And I'll tell you why. And I did a nutritionist. I was listening to a podcast the other day. You know about the insulin spike and the sugar spike when we have the carbs or the sugar.
Right.
And you know how you get that burst of energy? I didn't know until about 72 hours ago. That's not a burst of energy.
What is it?
It's a dopamine hit.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you take that big thing of orange juice in the morning and you're like, I feel good. That's not a sugar rush. It's too fast.
Yeah.
That's why you have to crash afterwards.
Yeah.
And so there are certain things that there's a physical, like food and drugs and stuff like that. There's a physical hooking, right?
Yeah.
But all of it has a process addiction. And when he and I started getting into this, we're like, I think this problem is not restricted to alcoholics and drug addicts. I think this is a human problem.
I agree.
I think there's a lot of people who will never walk into a 12-step meeting who need this information because they don't know that they're trapped in these cycles.
Yeah. What do you think? What's your take on that?
Yeah, food is a funny one because it is just like that. It's also process in nature because we celebrate with it. We meet with it. We get together over it. Family, all kinds
bond
of
over it.
Dates. You're going out to eat. So it's hard. That's a tough one to get under control for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to abstain things than it is to moderate them. And so food falls under that category. I'm either real plump or I'm in shape. Just by what I'm eating. But what I agree 100% with Chance. What I realized was that drugs and alcohol weren't my number one problem at all.
Right.
They weren't, and it was more related to the way that I sexualize attachments and the way that I have the process addiction of seeking and conquering acting out partners. Everything in my life I filter through that lens first. And it wasn't until I figured that out that I could put those roadblocks in place to not act on them.
Yeah.
I'm a committed man today to my wife, and I haven't always been. That was tough. Because for most of us, we don't suffer from a lack of information or a lack of research on the topic, and I've heard enough people talk about it, and I've crashed enough times to know it, and that it was real. That was problem number one, and so then we got to find out where it comes from, right? And so which means reliving childhood traumas that I hadn't looked at in 20 plus years.
Yeah,
I was pretty much sold on the idea that I was going to be a player for life, and that somehow there would be one that was okay with that lifestyle and would still cater. Like, I just figured it would work out.
Which is crazy to even think that we thought that. Yeah.
Because now I talk to my wife and I'm like, what role in that would you have played? And like, none. Right?
None.
And so, and from a practical standpoint, when you execute that kind of plan in the group of Narcotics Anonymous, you're going to get those kind of people playing those roles. You know? And then we inherit their problems and their energies, and it just becomes which is why they got that stupid rule nobody follows about not dating.
Well, it becomes emotionally incestuous. It really does.
I mean, you're fucking each other, you're recovering together, you're dying together,
you're
taking the shit
You're accountable
together.
to each other, you're sharing, you're bonding, you're socializing. Like, it's very sick. It can be.
Yeah. So I want to circle back to the peers that you had. So when you started this process, I'm assuming that you had to weed some people out of your life, and then obviously surround yourself with folks who are going to call you out for your nonsense or sharpen you or anything of that. Was that easy? Was that hard to cut some of that baggage out?
Well, by default, a lot of folks will fall off just because you're not doing the same primary thing.
Because you're not in those areas.
It happens organically sometimes.
Right, yeah. Because you're just not in those areas, right? So.
Yeah, like I haven't talked to that liquor store owner since,
Right.
Like, we don't have the same circles. So that takes care of a lot of it. But because of the neural pathways already being formed, if we're not careful, we'll find them again. There's like magnets on people. Like
you can move to a new town where you don't know anybody,
And
you'll find dope.
oh yeah.
But it's the same thing. You can move to a new NA group and say, listen, I'm not going to womanize and cheat and lie, and I'm not going to do that anymore. You can move to a new group, and you'll gravitate right towards the people.
Yeah.
Water seeks its own level.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is why anytime, and I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers here,
Oh yes.
which I know breaks both of your
Oh
hearts.
yeah, I'm devastated right now.
Anybody that complains about how toxic their partner is choking on irony. Because toxic people don't end up with healthy people.
No.
So
Healthy
if
people
you
won't have them.
if you have a toxic, narcissistic, controlling partner, there is something equally sick about you that makes that relationship work. Or you would leave. That's it. There is a need getting met by staying in a situation that is dysfunctional, and that's it.
So when you boys tell somebody that is there, like they think they can't get out.
Well, I have a very, very simple thing that I've said for years, and I stand by it.
Okay.
We used to have a men's support group, and this guy would come in every week. Wouldn't he, Nikki?
Yes,
Yeah.
he would.
He would come in every week, and he would complain about his girlfriend who was doing mysteriously the exact same thing every single week. And he did this for months and months and months. And you could, like, it was like Chicken Little, and it was like Groundhog Day. Every Sunday he would come in, and finally, and I just had a bad day anyway, right? So he comes in, and funny, you know who I'm talking about. So he comes in, and I'm like, listen, accept her exactly how she is, leave, or shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Actually, you can do the last one if you pick one of the first two.
Yeah.
And the thing is we become married to our grief,
Right.
where we actually become attached to the complaining
Yeah.
about the person causing the problem in our life. It's the psychology of it is fascinating.
Yeah.
Less so when you're in the middle of it, but most people are willing participants in their own
Well, they
misery.
keep it around like a pet.
Exactly.
Keep it around like a pet. Because
If I
they
didn't
don't
have
know.
this thing to complain about,
Right,
then I would
right.
have to take responsibility for my own life.
Yeah. And that's the difference between codependency and interdependency.
Right.
We can become codependent on that because even if it's from hell, it's still producing a chemical dope.
Right.
And that, and people not digging into the primary issues underneath why they continue to choose people like this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. That victim martyr complex of it serves a need for me to be the good guy in this situation.
So let me ask this about your lovely bride, who I
She's amazing.
Who I will always say that all men outkick their coverage.
Most of us.
Yeah.
I would say, like, have you? Like, I've never, like, I rarely see a guy that their spouse isn't better looking than them. Like, you're an ugly dude. Like, how did you? Anyways, I digress on that.
That's why I'm single.
Well, okay.
Shut up, Jimmy.
So but your spouse didn't. She doesn't have the background like you have. She didn't do the substance abuse, everything. See, because when you say that you asked your wife, like, hey, what role do you think in this gangster lifestyle?
Yeah.
Would you put? You're like none.
No.
So it's amazing because obviously Miriam didn't grow up with the same background I did.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like, she doesn't understand, even though she's very loving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there's some stuff like, man, you don't understand, right? So you talk about those peers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you bounce a lot off of them? Like, I mean, obviously, like Miriam, she's not going to understand a whole bunch, even though I call her my sainted wife. Saint Miriam is what I call her. That's why, I bounce it off.
Yeah,
that makes her Catholic.
Yeah.
What we're saying.
That's so funny.
So tell me about that. You're having a bad day, right?
Yeah.
You're right there. So I mean, who do you pick up the phone to and go, hey man, listen, this is what's going on.
So I do have a sponsor in NA, and he, between my therapist and the two, will generally get that first call. But the benefit of having some transparency and a we relationship means that Nicole has been with me through a lot of this work, has witnessed it. She gets the outlines. I do the work, but she's very familiar with the process of all of it. I include her in all of it. So she is oftentimes somebody that I can speak to. That's the biggest peer of all is my wife. Women were never held in a position for me that was a peer, let alone one of authority or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was imprinted on me until later. I didn't realize I was chauvinistic and sexist. And
Yeah.
You're right.
Because nobody told you, right?
I was probably a little racist. I know I was a little racist, a little homophobic, a little all of that.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't what I was, so it happened.
Right. Xenophobia.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so most of the time where I find myself is embarrassment. Because I can see all of this stuff and I can sit here with the guys and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
When I'm out there and I respond or react negatively, flipping somebody off or just being a dick.
You ever think they deserve it though?
Sometimes.
See, that's exactly. Once you had that, I'm just kidding.
But like, I know now, right? And so half the time I'm like, oh, what a bonehead. Like, why'd you say that? And we've got a phrase in NA about giving yourself a break, because you start going down this road of self-identification, you're going to find a long list of shit that you could focus on all day long, hating yourself.
Right.
You just blow your head off at some point. It's
so this is what I tell people, because you were talking about the Catholic Church, and so for, I lean a lot into my faith, you know that, you see my social media stuff, and so what I tell people when they change their life, when they accept Christ, right? When they say, "Hey, I'm committed. I'm going to follow Christ." And so I see it all the time. They're on fire. Right? You'll hear they're on fire. They're sold out. But once they make that one mistake, they're like, "Oh man," they start going into the cycle again. Like, "Oh, I'm not worthy. God doesn't love me," sort of thing. Like, "Woe is me." And I have to remind them of this. So if you're listening, here's the thing that I tell them. That whenever you accept Christ, you are covered by the Lamb of God, right? You're covered by the Lamb. And so I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know that I'm going to, I try not to tell people they're number one, especially driving. I tell Chance. Chance tells me he's number one.
I told you you're number one when I got out of the car this morning.
Listen, man, and that's a sign of friendship. Anyway, but what I tell people is, you say, give yourself some slack. Is I tell people that when God looks at you, He sees that you're covered by the blood of His Son. He doesn't hate His Son. He loves His Son. He gave it to Him. So cut yourself some slack. You're not going to be on this earth perfect. Like, listen, I'm going to make mistakes. I know that.
I think a lot of it too, and this is one of the beefs that I have with the language of faith.
Okay.
Is that for people like me who have an astronomical amount of work to do, once me making the decision to say get clean or to be different or to stop womanizing and lying and like all that kind of, making a decision that I'm going to not be this guy anymore is the first of 100,000 steps that I'm going to have to take. And when I hear things like, today I'm a new creature in Christ. I'm a new man, and I've been healed, and all. When I hear that kind of language, what I do is I twist that into meaning, well, that's it. Then I don't have to do anything now.
So
I'm healed.
So you think there's no work? So
that's the thing. Yeah. Jimmy, they don't talk a lot about the work. They talk a lot about how I'm a new creature now, and I'm a new creation, and I've been born again. This language is great, and I'm not saying the language is wrong. But there should be like an Article 1 subchapter A. Hey, listen, you've got a lot of work to do too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't. I guess it's because it's not as exciting to say, by the way, things are about to get much harder for you.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't say that.
That's really
but here's the thing. That's not a great sales pitch. But that's the truth. For guys like me, it wasn't like a 180
Right.
and then I didn't struggle after that.
Right.
And the problem is, I think we need to talk about that.
Right. And
Because
I'm a big
otherwise, how am I going to give myself some grace
Right.
when I stumble?
Let's talk about
I'm
the
like, well, I
habits.
must not have made the decision last week because clearly I'm not a new creation
Right.
because I just did it again.
Right.
Maybe I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
So again, there's
No,
a
I see what you're
dialogue that needs to happen because otherwise a guy like me will think, well, this doesn't work either
Right. Exactly. You'll see
because I'm
this-
still struggling.
Yeah. No.
You know?
That's a good point. I think that we do need to talk more about that.
So interesting thing. Do you mind?
Mm.
I'm assuming you and I have been pretty transparent today. So how I met Carlos. Okay. So probably the most toxic relationship of my life. Okay. Which he had a front row seat to.
Okay.
Right. And the thing is, there was nothing wrong with her that wasn't wrong with me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were,
Yeah.
he used the word peers many times.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a very unhealthy version of peer.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
When you're sick like me.
We were peers in all the worst ways. We negatively complimented each other. And we had about a decade long back and forth. And that's about as far as I'll go into that story
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a pretty painful story and I caused a great deal of harm.
Right.
Right? But that's how I met Carlos. Right? And I still remember the look on, because we didn't know each other very well when she and I decided, and it was her idea, but I was on board because of your situation at the time, and you didn't get a baby shower for Lucas,
Mm.
and we held one at my house.
Mm.
You remember that?
Mm.
And the look on his face, I've never seen in my life somebody more excited to be a dad.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is, I didn't know you. I really didn't know you.
Yeah.
And so really my first impression of you was like, this is a magical thing. Like, this kid's not even visible yet very much.
Yeah.
And he's already like, this is how I'm going to be and this is what I'm going to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wonder, because I think there have been a lot of piece of shit dads that blamed the fact that they had one like them.
Mm.
And it perpetuated this cycle of like absentee father into absentee father into
Mhm.
absentee father.
Yeah.
But you went completely the other direction with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we see that play out in the inner cities the most with the perpetuation of
Yeah.
legacies. Legacies can be passed on even when they're detrimental. And that's a lot of the work we do today is recreating a legacy. The childbearing thing, I don't know where, I didn't have one, so it's a pretty good idea that, maybe I wanted to change that or whatever. But it was just in me. It was inherent.
It was.
And to this day, I get angry. I boycott products that only cater to moms and women.
Right.
I wouldn't buy diapers if it said mom's #1 choice or something on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've never not felt that same paternal feeling.
Sure.
So I can't really speak to where it came from, but I was super fucking excited.
Very excited. I've never
Yeah.
seen anyone that
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
And-
No, that's
and-
awesome.
And he's about to be 10 in March.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy. I have no idea how that time flew by.
10 years.
Yeah.
Huh?
10 years.
I know Luna just turned 10 this year, last year.
Man.
That's a whole
It's
decade.
I know!
Well,
That's crazy.
What's crazy, so when we found out Miriam was pregnant with Journey, we weren't married yet. Spoiler alert. Anyway, so Miriam.
How did that happen?
No idea. The Virgin Miriam.
Yeah.
That's
Immaculate.
Immaculate.
It was
It
immaculate.
So she was 27, I was 25, and so she had just come out of a marriage. Her ex cheated on her, my ex cheated on me, sort of thing. And so I refused, Carlos, I refused to get married again. My plan when I got out of the Air Force was, got my first job in Oklahoma City doing airspace procedures for the FAA as a contractor. Was Monday through Friday I go there and go to work because it was my first straight Monday through Friday that I ever had. Weekends and nights I was going to be in Bricktown, Oklahoma City. I was going to do cocktails and dreams, baby. Filling the bottles. Man, I was just...
The Alabama Slam.
Oh, man. Miriam, of course, jokes that she saved me from STDs and child support.
Yeah,
so
that's a real thing.
Yep.
So
and you can have both of those.
You can't. And medicine can cure up some. Yeah, so
not the child support.
That's not child support.
Some motherfucker.
So when she found out, when we found out she was pregnant, she called her parents, and that conversation was a lot different than mine with my mom and whatever else. Because I was excited, right? I'm like, heck yeah, I am going to be a better dad than my dad was, and I try to do that, right? I sacrifice sleep and do whatever else just so I can be at all my kids' events because I wanted to be, this
what you didn't have.
Exactly, and so I wonder. Of course, it's the counter argument, right? Because I don't know, because they're like, I wonder if I'm compensating because of that. Like, maybe I am, or maybe that's just who.
Well, if you're compensating in the right direction, it's probably okay.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm wondering, like, would I have been the same dad that I am if I didn't go through the nonsense, right? That's the counter argument. I don't know, right?
I think it's a largely, and we could dive into this a whole other episode, but. Yeah. Since we're at the end, I can tell you that I don't think it has as much to do with what we're given. Because Carlos and I have 100% different backstories. Like 15 years old and younger, right? Completely different stories. Right?
Yeah.
For the life of me, and I certainly didn't have perfect parents. I had human parents. I wasn't, what I mean? I wasn't raised by robots. They had their flaws, definitely. But I honestly had a great set of parents. And I was a monster.
Yeah.
Like, I was really, I have whole swaths of my life where I was a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
I don't have a good solid reason to point my finger and say, well, if they hadn't done that when I was young, this wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Because I was given everything I needed to be a healthy, balanced, and I wasn't.
But we can, that's a philosophical debate.
Right. But I also know people who were raised in the dregs of the gutter, who ended up being noblemen of virtue and So when I remember seeing one of those printed things at the printing place when I was a kid. It says life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you do with it. And I think it is our job to do better with whatever we were given. And Carlos is one of the few men that I know that is not remaining satisfied with whatever progress you've made up until now. It's like, you know what, this is great, but I can do better. I can be better.
Yeah. The benefits just keep pouring in.
Yeah.
It's not a debatable topic. If you plant the seed, the fruit is great. And I think that by not only talking about it, but by showing both sides, the positivity and the struggle, like you said, entering a church, being honest about how hard it's going to be, that it's going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
But what you get in return is something that is invaluable. I have a sense of permanency in my life today. There's things that are set, my faith, my family. Doesn't mean they can't die.
Right.
They'll still be them. Whereas before it was very short segments of life at a time. It could be a different show every half hour to an hour.
Yeah.
There was no long-term planning. There was no long-term decision making because there wasn't any reason for it.
Yeah.
Even as, when I became a father and had a son, he would just come with me.
Right.
It was no big deal. He lived a crazy life too with me. We'll talk about baby mamas.
We'll have you on the show.
That's
we'll talk
episode
some more.
2.0.
So what do you do? What do you do now?
Today, I actually work for the Catholic Church.
Okay.
Somehow or another, I've carved out a bit of a career in facilities and building maintenance and construction. My wife and I have owned a couple of businesses. We've sold a couple of businesses. She actually works for the church as well. So we are extremely entrenched in the Catholic Church from a visitor standpoint as well as professionally. And I'm just like the farthest thing from a Bible thumper ever. I think I joked with you the first time because I've worked at 2 churches and a monastery. And I had to go to the first one and explain my past to ask for the job.
Yeah.
We joked, it was like, forgiveness is what y'all do around here. So I'm asking for forgiveness. And it worked, and I got my first job there, and that's pretty much where I've been ever since. The monastery was cool. So 12 nuns lived there, and I had, facilities management. During my time there, I got to bury 2 nuns. I made a coffin out of wood for one of them, and I got to be a part of digging the hole, finding the concrete case that the casket will go in, paying the funeral home. I led the whole thing twice. It was really crazy.
So how? I know that we're winding down, but now I need to. How was that? You what? How did that change you?
It was the coolest thing I've ever made. I'm a woodworker, but when they told me, "Do you think you could make a coffin?" I was like, "Well, yeah, that's just crazy, right?" And it was surreal to see this nun who, she's got flowers all around. She's laying in my box, right, and they're all praying, and it was a trip. And then we lowered it into the ground with ropes. I put the lid on it. That was nuts. I've done it.
Wow.
I've done it twice now, and I have led the burial of my stepdad. This is a trip. My stepdad's parents, my step-grandparents, I'm still a part of their life today.
Wow.
I buried my grandfather a year ago with our church and everything. I haven't talked to my stepdad in 20 years, but I'm very close with his sister, his mother, father, and his niece. And they were at my wife's birthday party the other day.
Wow.
Anyway, so for some reason, burying the dead has been a part of it. Maybe that's going to be something in the future I do. I don't know yet.
So do you remember, you've seen all over our social media and our website and everything, all of the pictures. There's a picture of me I have my long braid and I'm squeezing this little kid's face with my hand.
Yeah.
He did all those pictures. Him and Nicole did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He did all of that.
That's pretty awesome.
And this is how much I love Carlos. This will tell you exactly who he is. So he comes in here and they do a thing. And it's almost like there were secret agents like scoping the joint. You know what I mean? So he comes in and he sees the floor and he says, "All right, listen, man. These gray dots aren't going to work." He goes, "Can we pull those up?" I'm like, "First of all, no. You can go, no." I said, "No, but they've been down for so many years. If you pulled them up, there would still be dots where they were."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "It's fine. Just leave them in there."
Yeah.
Him and Nicole edited out every gray dot because they didn't like the optics of them in all of the pictures. Hundreds of pictures.
Yeah.
They went in there and
pixel by
pixel, they took all of them out.
Yeah, Photoshop.
Yeah. It was really cool, man. And here's the thing, I didn't say, "Hey, can you take these dots out?"
Yeah.
He didn't like them. You know?
Yeah.
And so there's a thing of when you put your name on something and say, "This is my work."
Yeah.
Like when you it is the proper use of pride.
Yeah.
It's not the in the 7 deadly sins, the vanity.
Right.
That is a very dangerous thing that he and I know all too well. The evils of vanity.
Right.
But like he and I have learned, like a lot of these things, there is a spiritual version of that before it gets corrupted.
Yeah.
And photoshopping out gray dots because you have pride in your work, making sure that coffin was something that would bring honor to that person, that's the proper use of that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I believe, and I'm really believing more and more and more every day, that I'm not capable of experiencing those without God.
Yeah.
I'm not capable of making that happen on my own.
Right.
And if there was a way, I would have figured it out.
Carlos, listen, man. I want end the show here, man. I'm a dude. I'm struggling. Doesn't matter what I'm struggling with, man. I come to you. I'm on the edge. Like, dude, I can't do it. I'm a quitter. I'm a failure. Nothing's going right in my life. I just want to end it. Give me some, knock it out, man. Give me that home run.
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that that's exactly where God wants you. Because it's only in those moments of desperation that we're humbled enough to get on our fucking knees and say, all right, I'm powerless. So not only is that guy right where he's supposed to be, but there's only one way from there, and it's up. Knowing that you're loved no matter what. And generally speaking, by the time we've reached that point, we already know where the answers are. We just need to go.
Right.
We know where the group is because we've heard about them, or the telephone number, or we have that friend we know we can ask. Put the ego aside and make the phone call.
And if you don't have what he just said, if you don't know where to go or who to ask, reach out to one of us.
Absolutely, man. We've said this before in the podcast, dude. Message us. Message. We have Facebook and Instagram stuff, guys.
Carlos, thank you so much for coming on, man.
I can't wait for Carlos 2.0, man.
Yeah, I know it's gonna be fun.
Baby mama issue.
Baby mama, guys, go like, subscribe. Love you guys. See you next time.